Today's bite-sized episode is sponsored by AG1, one of the most nutrient-dense whole food supplements that I've come across, and I myself have been drinking it regularly for over 5 years. It contains vitamins, minerals, probiotics, prebiotics, digestive enzymes, and so much more, and can help with energy, focus, gut health, digestion, and support a healthy immune system. If you go to drinkag1.com/live more, they are giving my listeners a very special offer, a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first order. See all details at drinkag1.com/live more. Welcome to Feel Better, Live More Bite Size, your weekly dose of positivity and optimism to get you ready for the weekend. Today's clip is from episode 418 of the podcast with Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. Gabrielle believes that the single biggest problem with our health these days is not that we carry too much fat, but that we don't carry enough muscle. In this clip, she shares why muscle is critical for our health and our metabolism, how to make new healthy habits stick, and why strength training can help us live longer, stronger, and better lives. So, Dr. Lyon, you believe that all of us need to be focused on the health of our muscles, whether we want to burn fat, live longer, improve our hormonal profile, increase our energy, or reduce the risk of getting sick in the future. You believe that our muscle health is really, really important. Why?
If you were to ask me, what do I believe is most important? Is it food, or is it training, or is it name something, ice bath, etc.? I would say the influence of exercise trumps nearly everything because of its influence on all other body systems. That is how impactful training is for people. The quality of our muscle is the cornerstone for overall health and well-being. And quite frankly, it's the organ of longevity. There's nothing more important than skeletal muscle. It is different than this idea of looking good in a bikini and athletic performance, which is, when we think about skeletal muscle, that's often what we think about. I'd love to start with a story that will really highlight where this came from. I did my fellowship in geriatrics and nutritional sciences. In order for me to do a 2-year clinical fellowship, I had to work as a geriatrician and get my fellowship training in geriatrics. And in the mornings, early morning, I did obesity medicine research. And during the day, I would see patients in the hospital, in the nursing home, in memory and aging clinics. In the evening, I would go back to doing obesity medicine research. And one of the things that we were looking at was body composition and brain function. And, there's always that one patient, right? I'm sure you've had that one patient that changed everything for you. And for me, it was a woman named, we'll just call her Betty. She was a mom of 3 kids in her mid-50s. She had always struggled with the same 20 pounds. We know a ton of people like that. 20 pounds over a lifetime, always put herself last, showed up for her family, showed up for her friends, and did exactly what the medical community had told her, which was eat less and exercise more. And quite frankly, I gave her the same advice. We imaged her brain, and her brain looked like the beginning of an Alzheimer's brain in her mid-50s. As you can imagine, it really struck me. I realized that she'd done everything we had told her to. And in the process, she lost weight, just as many people lose weight, go through a process of yo-yo dieting. But she also lost skeletal muscle and destroyed her metabolism and impacted her brain. So I started thinking, okay, how is this the standard of care? So I started to really begin to put these pieces together. What was the one thing that all these patients had in common in the nursing home, in the hospital rounds, in the dementia unit? It wasn't that they were overfat. It was that they had unhealthy skeletal muscle first. and that we had been trying to fix this obesity epidemic for the last 50 years. And all of the things that ride along with obesity, Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, you name it, hypertension, insulin resistance, these are not diseases of obesity. In fact, these were diseases of skeletal muscle first. Insulin resistance. Insulin is a hormone released from the pancreas that moves blood sugar out of the bloodstream into the cells. And I realized, I had this aha moment that in order to get people healthy, and if we really truly cared about longevity, we had to course correct the way in which we were thinking and shift our focus from the pathology of fat to the building, the maintaining, the cultivation of the health of skeletal muscle. And that's really where this concept of muscle-centric medicine came from. And of course, I am going to talk to you about exactly what skeletal muscle does, why it's an organ system. But I think it's important that everyone put themselves in the framework of understanding that we've had a narrative of constantly focusing on all these other diseases as if they're out there. But truly, these diseases begin in our 30s.
It's a powerful story. And yes, we all have, I think, as physicians, as healthcare professionals, as personal trainers, we all have that one patient, that one client that started to change things in our brain that made us question some of the things that we've been taught, or certainly question some of the ways in which we were practicing. But you mentioned there Alzheimer's in the brain. You've also mentioned the importance of skeletal muscle. Now, I think for many people, they're going to go, well, yeah, I get it. Skeletal muscle is important, but what on earth has it got to do with the health of our brain?
Yeah, it's a really great question. You originally asked me, why is my working hypothesis that skeletal muscle is the cornerstone for health and wellness? Let's talk about what skeletal muscle does. Number one, it is an organ system. It is an organ system that you have voluntary control over. Quite simply, this means it's the only organ system you can directly do something about with conscious thought. You cannot exercise your liver. We're unable to tell our thyroid to produce T4. We are unable to tell other organ systems exactly what to do. Skeletal muscle as an organ system is under direct voluntary control. Muscle has probably the biggest influence, by the way, on our entire homeostasis. Over time, skeletal muscle that is not exercised and unhealthy ends up looking like a marbled steak rather than a fillet, which is exactly what it should look like. It becomes less efficient at utilizing energy. Skeletal muscle is one of the primary sites for mitochondria. Mitochondria, which I know that you've talked about often, is the powerhouses of the cell. It's where we generate energy. Skeletal muscle is a primary site for fatty acid oxidation. People are worried about their cholesterol and they're worried about triglycerides. Skeletal muscle is a primary site for utilization. When we think about metabolism and metabolic regulation, skeletal muscle is the primary site, and it's 40% of our body. This is just one aspect from a metabolic perspective. When you talk about brain function and the health of skeletal muscle, if you do not have healthy skeletal muscle, you do not have a healthy metabolism. The body becomes insulin resistant, just as the brain becomes insulin resistant. Alzheimer's is often thought of as type 3 diabetes of the brain, which means our metabolic health has a direct impact on our brain function. And we know that the smaller the waistline, the less body fat an individual has, the better over time the brain will function.
It's just remarkable to think about all of the different things that skeletal muscle influences. Yeah, as we discussed the first time you came on my show, many of us for years have just thought about it as a physical thing, dumb muscle. It's, a bit more if you want to look big and be a bodybuilder, but otherwise it doesn't really matter. One of the key points we mentioned in our first conversation was that as we get older, above the age of 30, unless we're doing something about it, we are losing our skeletal muscle every year. right? So listeners of this show will know that I do a 5-minute strength workout every morning whilst my coffee is brewing. Now, you may argue that 5 minutes is not enough.
I'll take it.
But I would say I keep in pretty good shape from doing that now. Over the last 2 years, things have changed. As I have got older and I look in detail at the research on movement and exercise, I'm like, hey, Rongan, listen, if you want to be a capable, strong, resilient human being, you've got to move your body. So I am now committing to 1 hour's movement a day, right? And I love these daily things because if it's daily, it's a habit. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to run every day, right? Some days it will be a 1 hour fast walk. Other times it will be a run or whatever it might be. But by making it a rule, by making it a standard, then I'm accountable to myself. And I want to tie that in to this time of year, right? Even if people just commit to one thing and they do it, I think that is the best thing you can do. You give yourself evidence that you do what you say you're going to do.
You are onto something, my friend. And what you're also onto is shifting a narrative and a way of thinking of how we have to age. Does this take time commitment? Does it take physical effort? Is it sometimes uncomfortable because the last thing you want to be doing is push-ups and squats in your kitchen? Yeah, it's a drag, potentially. But the outcome is so beneficial when you are leveraging this organ of longevity from a lifetime trajectory of, it's like putting money in the bank. You are doing what you need to do. It's an organ system. It is an organ system designed for movement.
One of the things I enjoyed the most about your latest book, Forever Strong, was how you covered the psychological aspects of change as well as the physical ones. Because what I'm writing about, the things I think about more, are these mindset issues. Because actually, once you've got the foundation of mindset right, I find that those downstream behaviors of food and movement, whatever it might be, are so much easier for people to incorporate into their lives. I'm all for giving people information. And in our first conversation together, you gave a masterclass in protein, in resistance training. But I think people, even with that information, don't always manage to make change. So let's imagine a scenario, and given the time of year, it's January, and someone is thinking, this year something is going to be different. And in my view, if you don't take a different approach, why is it that 2024 is going to be any different than 2023 or 2022 or 2021? So instead of trying to buy a new diet plan or a new strength program, whatever it might be, sure, do that. But you need to go a little bit further upstream as well. So can you relate what we're talking about now to people wanting to create healthy behaviors?
I have a great solution for this. Are you ready? The solution is we set standards. We don't set goals. Standards for how we show up, standards for how we execute. You no longer need to set goals. If you have a weight loss goal, this sets you up for failure. The first thing that people should do is set a standard for how they want to show up. For me, I show up, I train. It is a standard that I have set for myself. It is not a goal. And when we shift away from goals, because goals are variable and you have an opportunity to meet that goal, or you have an opportunity to fail at that goal. But when you set a standard for the way in which you function in your everyday life, and I encourage people to write it down.
Yeah.
What is the standard that you are going to set for yourself? And then execute on that standard. Know your weaknesses. Don't be surprised by them. Plan for them. They're coming and they're totally predictable. You cannot be shocked by your own human nature.
Yeah. Getting to know yourself better, understanding yourself, knowing your limitations, knowing your patterns, knowing when you go off track, right? this is really where it's at if you want to make changes.
I think it's really important that we understand. I will say this first, that motivation comes and goes, and you have to plan for that. You cannot be shocked by the fact that you will not be motivated. I was able to address all of that stuff many years ago. There are many times now I do not feel like training. I have two very little children. My husband is a first-year surgical resident, which means he works 100 hours a week. Here's what I do. I am not surprised by the fact that I am not motivated to train. What I do is I have it all set up. For example, I have training partners that I know are going to be meeting me at the gym. I am not going to let them down. I would never not say I'm going to show up for something and then not show up for it. I know that when I get off of a plane, I will go and I'll train. I don't feel like it. I'm already trying to, every Saturday we do this, or every Sunday we do this big group workout. Every Saturday night, I am trying to talk myself out of how I'm not going to be going and showing up for Sunday. Yet we're all surprised that we're going to start on a program January 1st, and then we're shocked by the fact that we're not motivated in 2 or 3 weeks. Plan for that. You're not going to feel motivated. You are going to feel motivated the first week. Failure to understand and plan for the fact that is absolutely going to fall off is a complete misstep. You plan for that. You have your teammates in place that you are going to show up for, because if you're not willing to do it for yourself, you will definitely show up to do it for another person. And yeah, that's all I can say about that. I am definitely not motivated a lot of the time, but I still will show up. The brain does a lot of things. The brain likes comfort. The brain tells us not to do all these things, but the brain is just an organ that pumps out thoughts. That's just what the brain does. It doesn't mean that they're relevant. It means that one can be discerning. You can have all the thoughts that you want, but when you commit to an action, you don't wait on motivation. You don't have to force yourself into doing anything. You might have a moment of negotiation. You took action. You're much more likely to take action in the future, and you build upon that.
For that person who wants to get into strength training, for someone who's never done anything, and let's say they're in their 40s, how would you advise that they start getting into resistance training?
Well, you had mentioned that you have a great coach. And I think now that we have access to online coaches and there's just a whole host of information, find a modality that works and be under the guidance of someone, or at least curate information. There's tons out there, because when you start, you are going to have much more of a response than someone who has already been training. Just doing basic body weight stuff like push-ups or squats or moving your body or doing lunges, this is an amazing place to start. You are doing something, again, when we talk about resistance training, moving your body weight would be considered resistance training. Then you graduate to bands. If you want to use bands, I think that is very, very, very helpful. It is easy to do at home. And then after you graduate from bands, and let's say you are doing things, I think being able to squat, get up off the floor, we are training for life. Being able to do a push-up, you have to be able to fall well. You have to be able to push yourself up off of the ground. Let's say you don't want to do any of those things, then you pick up a couple heavy bags and you walk and you carry them. Eventually you progress to kettlebells. What are actions that you do within your normal life that it will allow you to get better at doing those things?
Yeah.
We know that people have to carry groceries. Remember, we're not training to become better at exercise. We are training to become better at life. And you are doing actions that allow you to become better at life. We know that it is very critical to be able to get off the floor if you were to fall. Begin to think about things within life and put actions to those things. And what happens is over time, you can continue to increase the amount. So let's say when you start, you can do 10 squats. Well, then you can do 20 and you continue to push yourself. There are a whole host of opportunities and options. And there's only one wrong way to do it, by the way. And that's by not doing it.
Yeah. I circle that quote in your book. There is one slam dunk way to exercise wrong. Don't do it at all.
And it's also not if challenges are going to happen. It's when. It's not an if thing. It's a when thing. You train for life and you train for sickness. And I know that that sounds morbid, but the more healthy muscle mass you have, the more resilient you are going to be in midlife and later on. And the time to take action is now.
There's something also about strength training or exercise or training full stop that I don't think people talk about enough, how it makes you feel, right? When you can lift something heavy, when you're able to go on a 1-hour hike in the hills and you're able to do that, you come back and you've given yourself a shot of resilience. You feel like a capable, strong human being. We can talk about what having muscle mass does to lower inflammation, improve the health of your immune system, lower your risk of cancer, all those kind of things. Great. But it also does something arguably more important than any of those things. It gives you confidence in yourself.
I know. Isn't it amazing? Muscle is the cornerstone to longevity. And what is longevity? It's not just living longer. It's living happier. It's living more capable. It's being able to fulfill what you intended to fulfill. You're absolutely right. I have never heard a patient say to me, I regret being strong and capable. I regret that. Never in the history of ever. And if people understand as they are going into the new year, let's say you don't like exercise, fine. Think about how you are going to cultivate yourself to become better at life.
Hope you enjoyed that bite-sized clip. Do spread the love by sharing this episode with your friends and family. And if you want more, why not go back and listen to the original full conversation with my guest? If you enjoyed this episode, I think you will really enjoy my bite-sized Friday email. It's called the Friday 5. And each week I share things that I do not share on social media. It contains 5 short doses of positivity, articles or books that I'm reading, quotes that I'm thinking about, exciting research I've come across, and so much more. I really think you're going to love it. The goal is for it to be a small yet powerful dose of feel good to get you ready for the weekend. You can sign up for it free of charge at drchatterjee.com/Friday5. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Make sure you have pressed subscribe, and I'll be back next week with my long-form conversation on Wednesday and the latest episode of Bite Size next Friday.